You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I've got to start with Astros White Sox. The Astros obviously destroyed the White Sox yesterday. It's almost a good thing that I didn't preview that game. That game wasn't worth a preview. That game was a joke. That game was over after 4 innings. Guaranteed Rate Field was dead. You could hear a pin drop. I haven't heard a stadium that quiet since Game 4 of the 18 ALDS before the 9th inning. Yankee Stadium was dead until they mounted that 9th inning rally off Kimbrel that came oh so close to succeeding. The reality is, as much as I hate the Astros, and a lot of people hate the Astros, okay? It's not just me. But the reality is, you gotta give the devil his due. They're a great team. They really are. Not for nothing, but they've made 5 straight ALCSs. The last time that happened, you have to go back to those great Oakland Athletics teams of the early 70s. You may know that the Athletics won 3 straight World Series from 72 to 74, but what you may not know is that in 71 they got swept by the Orioles in the ALCS, and in 75 they got swept by the Red Sox in the ALCS. That's it. That's the only time in the history of the American League that we've had a team reach 5 straight ALCSs. In case you're wondering about the senior circuit, those great Atlanta Braves teams made the NLCS in every year except 1990. So from 91 to 99, they were always in the NLCS. Obviously, 94 doesn't count because of the players' strike. But think about that. For 8 straight years, the Braves were in the NLCS. And they only won 1 World Series. Team in the 90s, my ass. There was no team in the 90s. You have to separate it. The team of the early 90s was the Toronto Blue Jays. The team of the late 90s was the Yankees. That's it. That's how you do it. But not for nothing. If the only comparables we have are some of the greatest assemblages of talent in baseball history, you've got to just tip your cap to the Astros. I mean, here's a team that loses George Springer in free agency. They replace him with Miles Straw. He gets sent to the Indians. So they roll out 2 ham and eggers in Chas McCormick and Jake Myers. 95% of Astros fans wouldn't know those guys if they came to their house and delivered them a pizza. Their pitching staff really doesn't have an ace. At this stage of his career, Zack Greinke isn't an ace. At one point in time, he was an ace. No question. Not anymore. No Verlander. No Cole. No Morton. It's simply amazing that the Astros have kept this up. You remember when I said, when I was previewing the White Sox-Astros series, I said the Astros are here because of the usual suspects? What those guys have done is nothing short of incredible. If you have to go back 50 years for that to have been accomplished in the American League, 5 straight ALCS appearances, you've just got to tip your cap to these guys. The biggest travesty of the sign stealing is that it affected the legacy of some of the best players of this era. 50 years from now, when we're looking back at this era of baseball, we're going to think of guys like Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, and Alex Bregman as some of the best players of that era. Maybe not the best, but certainly one of the best. The reality is Jose Altuve has a case to be a Hall of Famer. Has a lot of bold type, has an MVP, 7-time All-Star, ALCS MVP. He won that by hitting the home run off Chapman in 2019 against the Yankees, an iconic moment. I mean, there are some voters that won't vote for him because of the sign stealing. You didn't need to do it. That's the thing. You have this fantastic assemblage of talent. You didn't need to do what you did. You think about some of the steroid guys. Bonds, Clemens, A-Rod, McGuire, Palmeiro, Sosa. These are great players. They didn't need a leg up. You have a fantastic assemblage of talent. Trust them. It's one thing if you're doing this for a team like the Orioles or the Marlins or the Diamondbacks, a bad team. But this Houston Astros team that, granted, started its run in 2017 when they were stealing signs, but to stay at that level, maybe not winning another World Series, but 5 straight ALCS appearances, 2 pennants, maybe 3. It just makes you hate the Astros more. I mean, this was a complete rout. Not just in yesterday's game, but the whole series. The Astros were the better team. A 6-1 win in Game 1? A 9-4 win in Game 2? Okay, you imploded in Game 3. No question. But to rebound in Game 4 by winning 10-1? This was a rout. When everything's said and done, we'll look back at this series as the worst series of this postseason. I mean, not for Yankees fans. I'm not counting the wild card game. That's not a series. I mean, sure, that game was tough, but that's nothing compared to the pain that we're gonna experience for the next week or so. The two biggest rivals of the Yankees, the Red Sox and Astros, are in the ALCS. The only comparable to this is 1986, when their two biggest rivals, the Red Sox and Mets, squared off in the World Series. My father told me he was rooting for injuries that whole World Series. You know what? I may be doing that in the ALCS. Maybe not a career ender, just enough to knock him out for a good chunk of the season. I mean, it's amazing how bad things have gotten for Yankees fans since the end of the 13-game winning streak. You had incredibly tough losses. You get creamed by the Red Sox in the wild card game. Your fans have to watch a playoff game on TV as opposed to having the opportunity to go. It's a lot easier for Yankees fans to get to the Bronx than it is Boston. And you combine this ALCS with the news that Hal Steinbrenner is leaning towards keeping Aaron Boone, and we've heard nothing about Cashman. It's a dark time to be a Yankees fan. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Right now, it's tough. Sure, maybe in the off-season, things will get better. Maybe they'll make some moves in free agency. Maybe they'll pull off a couple trades. And maybe Hal Steinbrenner will remember that he's a Steinbrenner. But for right now, it's looking really bad. Like, Rays Astros wouldn't have been great, but I would have rooted for the Rays. There are 4 baseball teams that I hate: the Red Sox, the Astros, the Mets, and the Rays. But the Rays are a distant 4th. Like, I wouldn't have been crazy about it, but Rays Astros, go Rays. And it's kind of funny. My uncle's a Dodgers fan. We spoke yesterday, and he said, I know you'll be rooting for the Giants, I'll be rooting for the Dodgers, we'll be on different sides. It's like, no. I'll root for the Dodgers for you. You're my uncle. I love you. But the Yankees and Dodgers are rivals. No, they're not. Maybe to the older Yankees fans and the older Dodgers fans, there's a rivalry. But if you were born after 1981, there's no Yankees-Dodgers rivalry. It's been 40 years since they last met in the World Series. There's no rivalry. Flat out, there just isn't. So my point in mentioning that is, if the Dodgers win the pennant, I don't care who they go up against. The Red Sox or the Astros, I'm rooting for the Dodgers. I may ask my uncle if he has a Dodgers hat I can borrow, or a Dodgers shirt, or a Dodgers jersey, something like that. It's going to be so hard for me to get into this ALCS. The NLCS, I'll get into no problem. But the ALCS, it's going to be next to impossible for me to watch it. Speaking of the NLCS, we know one of the participants. The Atlanta Braves knocked off the Milwaukee Brewers in the best game of that series. Finally, some offense. Yesterday, both teams combined for 9 runs. You know how many total runs were scored by both teams in the previous 3 games? 9. You can't make that up. The Brewers' offense finally showed up. They got a couple big hits with runners in scoring position. I mean, I'll say this. I saw some people saying that this basically exercises all the hitting demons that the Brewers had in this series. No, it doesn't. You can't score just 4 runs in an elimination game and tell me that's a good offensive performance. 4 runs isn't nothing, but it's not great. It's decent. It's like what should be expected of you. I understand that the Brewers were that team that won a bunch of 1-0 games or 2-1 games or stuff like that. But in the playoffs, that doesn't work. You've gotta show up on both ends. Yes, you need great pitching, but I've said this before. Great pitching means nothing if you don't have hitting to support it. I mean, the thing about this series is it has some great moments. The performances of Charlie Morton and Corbin Burnes in Game 1 were great. The performances of Max Fried and Brandon Woodruff in Game 2 were great. Fried was obviously a lot better than Woodruff. Game 3, really good performance by Ian Anderson. A big moment by Jock Peterson hitting the pinch hit 3-run home run. That was the only offense in the game. The Brewers only made 1 bad pitch that whole game. I mean, the Peterson home run is an iconic moment in Braves history. But what's more of an iconic moment is the Freddie Freeman home run yesterday. This guy never has to buy another drink in Atlanta. This guy's gonna get a statue outside of the ballpark when he retires. To hit that home run in the bottom of the 8th off Josh Hader, arguably the best closer in baseball, that's incredible. I mean, here's a guy in Hader who only gave up 3 home runs the whole year. What a great time to give up your 4th. I saw some people criticize Craig Counsell for putting Josh Hader in. Look, he was probably going to stretch Hader to multiple innings. He didn't want to do that, there's no question, but the Devin Williams injury kind of necessitated it. And not for nothing, but if a guy like Williams gives up that home run, or Brandon Woodruff, if he had stayed in, or Corbin Burnes, if he had come in, the argument would have been, why didn't you go to one of the best closers in baseball? At the end of the day, Hader has to execute, and he didn't. This loss isn't on Counsell. This loss is on Josh Hader. It's tough to get upset at him if you're a Brewers fan because he was so great this year, but look, Aroldis Chapman had those moments after great seasons. Same thing with Mariano Rivera. I mean, more than anything, get upset at your hitting. You have a right to be upset if you're a Brewers fan. You were the better team. You had the three-headed monster in Burns, Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta. But I don't care if your pitcher pitches a shutout. Unless you score a run or two, that shutout means nothing. I'm not saying that pitching isn't important. It is, obviously. But people just assume that if your pitcher goes 7 innings and only gives up like 1 run, you're going to win. That's not how it works. You still need to score to win. And the Brewers just couldn't do that in this series. Not for nothing, but you don't deserve to win the NLDS after only scoring 6 runs through 4 games. After getting shut out twice, you don't deserve to be one of the top 4 teams in baseball. That's just not how it works. I mean, the Brewers didn't have a great offense all year. Next to last in the National League in batting average, middle of the pack in home runs, third to last in hits, middle of the pack in on-base percentage. David Stearns is going to need to make a concerted effort to get better offensively. I mean, the biggest thing to me is getting a better center fielder. When I look at their lineup, that's their biggest hole. I'm fine with Omar Narvaez. I'm fine with Rowdy Tellez. I'm fine with Colton Wong. I'm fine with Willy Adames. I'm fine with Luis Urias. He had a great fielding game yesterday. Christian Yelich needs to be better. There's no question about that. But it's not like you're going to trade him. That's one of those things where the new hitting coaches, because make no mistake about it, if I'm running the Brewers, I'm firing Andy Haynes as hitting coach and Jacob Cruz as assistant hitting coach. For Yelich to have back-to-back seasons where he hits under 250 and hits less than 13 home runs, hits less than 52 RBIs, Yelich is better than that. You've got to fix him. And I'm fine with Avisail Garcia in right field. But center field, Jackie Bradley Jr. isn't going to get the job done. He failed miserably with the Brewers. He hit just 163. Lorenzo Cain hit just 257. You can do a lot better than that. If I'm the Brewers, I'm making a big run at Starling Marte. The guy hit .308 this year with 12 home runs, 55 RBIs, and 47 steals. He's the best center fielder available. You know he's not going to re-sign with the Athletics. I could really see the Brewers going hard for Marte. As for the Braves, didn't spend enough time on them. It's simply incredible what they've been able to do. A lot of people, and you can include me in this group, wrote off the Braves after the Ronald Acuna injury. And you combine that with not having Marcell Ozuna for a very good reason. No way he deserves to be a part of this, if what he's alleged to have done is true. But still, he's a good player. Won the NL home run title last year. He led the National League in RBIs. He finished 6th in MVP voting. Good player. And Mike Soroka didn't pitch at all this year. The Braves really had to retool on the fly. They bring up Huascar Ynoa. He pitches well for him in his rookie year. The Braves brought in an entirely new outfield. Guys like Jorge Soler, Adam Duvall, Jock Peterson, and Eddie Rosario didn't start the season on the Braves. They were playing big roles for the Braves down the stretch. And without Peterson hitting that home run in Game 3, and Game 2 for that matter, who knows where the Braves are? Fantastic job by Alex Anthopoulos. Fantastic job by Brian Snitker. I don't think the Braves are winning the pennant. I don't think they're as good as the Giants, and I don't think they're as good as the Dodgers, but for them to be the second best team in the National League, that's impressive. You've just got to tip your cap to them. Moving on now to Giants-Dodgers. And there's not much to talk about with this game. It was very hard to get into. It was over after the 4th inning. You knew the Dodgers weren't going to blow a 4-0 lead. The big question that I have is, what are you going to do with that bullpen? For both teams. Yes, both teams have their big guns going. Julio Urias is my pick to win the NL Cy Young, and Logan Webb had an excellent Game 1. But you know that managers get a little twitchy with that right or left arm once they start walking out to the mound. We know this. Starting pitchers are on an incredibly short leash in the postseason. It doesn't matter if it's pitchers like Urias and Webb. If they allow traffic on the bases, they're getting hooked. It's just that simple. The thing is, though, I don't know how much both teams are going to be able to do that in Game 5. I understand that Game 5 is tomorrow, so the relievers have an off day. But not for nothing, you look at both teams, they're probably going to have a short bullpen. For the Giants, I don't see how Harlan Garcia pitches. He threw 27 pitches yesterday. Dominic Leone pitched 22. Tyler Rogers has been used a lot in this series. Zach Littell threw 35 pitches. Jake McGee is a little banged up. He showed that yesterday. Meanwhile, for the Dodgers, do they use Blake Trinan? I don't see how. Trinan pitched in both games 3 and 4. I just don't see how he's available. He's the Dodgers setup guy, so if he's unavailable, Do we see Scherzer? Is Max Scherzer going to come out of the bullpen? I mean, the Dodgers bullpen is a lot more solid than the Giants bullpen, but I do have some questions about it. But at the end of the day, we got what we wanted as baseball fans. Even though there was only one Game 5 in the LDS, if you had to pick a series for a Game 5, it would be Giants-Dodgers. It would be the de facto World Series. Two teams that won over 105 games are duking it out in a must-win game in San Francisco. Winner meets the Braves in the NLCS. The loser makes golf reservations. This is what we all wanted. It's going to be must-see TV. I'll say this, though. No way should that game be starting at 9 o'clock. I understand that's 6 o'clock Pacific time, so you give Californians time to leave work and get to the ballpark. But that game is going to be over at like 12:30, 1 o'clock-ish on the East Coast. And you combine that with the fact that you're going up against a Thursday night football game with the defending Super Bowl champions in it, and a quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who I feel like if you haven't seen a lot of him, you may want to watch. It's just tough. That's a bad job by Major League Baseball. And not for nothing, but the Islanders season starts tomorrow. They're playing the Hurricanes tomorrow. I'm going to be bouncing all over the place. Speaking of the NHL, the 2021-22 season got off the ice yesterday with one rout and one pretty darn good game. I'll start with Penguins Lightning. An incredibly surprising result. If you had the Pittsburgh Penguins with no Crosby, no Malkin, and no Gensel beating the back-to-back Stanley Cup winners to kick off the NHL season, play lotto tonight. Because I would have gotten that game wrong. I mean, you could feel the entire momentum of that game change right after the Danton Hyman goal. It's a scoreless first period. The Penguins did outplay the Lightning in that period. No question about that. But you know what? You head into the locker room tied at 0 after 20 minutes. Okay, there are worse places to be. But then 12 seconds into the second period, you give up a goal, and then 4 minutes later, you give up a goal to Brian Boyle, a guy who you didn't think would be on the Penguins about a week ago? That's tough. Now, I'll say this, in all fairness to the Lightning, 3 of the Penguins' 6 goals were empty netters. The Penguins were up 3-0 with under 6 minutes left to play. Most coaches, if their team is down 3, will just throw in the towel. They'll say, okay, let's keep the deficit respectable. Let's not hurt our guys' plus minus, our guys' confidence. We'll lick our wounds, but then we'll get after it in the next game. John Cooper decided to be a little aggressive. I don't know whether that was because his team was being shut out or whether he knew that it was a nationally televised game, the first NHL game on ESPN since 2004, and the entire NHL world was watching. I mean, that was the first game of the season. Nothing else was on. If you're just a hockey fan, you're watching that game. Maybe all of that was in Cooper's mind, but he had the goalie pulled when the Penguins were up 3-0. Then Anthony Cirelli scored, so about 5.5 minutes left. You're down 2. Some coaches would say put the goalie back in for a couple more minutes and then pull him again. But Cooper decided to stay with the empty net. Teddy Bluger then scored to make it 4-1 Penguins. So I'm thinking, okay, now you're going to put Vasilevsky back in, right? No, Vasilevsky stayed out. Alex Killorn scored to make it 4-2. So Vasilevsky stays out. Then Evan Rodriguez scored. Brian Rust scored after that. The game was a lot closer than the score would indicate, but I didn't like Cooper doing that with Vasilevsky. I like John Cooper a lot. One of the best coaches in the NHL, very smart guy. But once it's 4-1 or 5-2, just keep Vasilevsky in. You don't need to go crazy like that. You don't need to be uber aggressive. It's the first game of the season. There are 81 more games. You just didn't need to go that crazy. Moving on now to Kraken Golden Knights. With the first game in a franchise's history comes useless trivia. Let me give you the useless trivia. The first face-off in Kraken history was won by Jared McCann. The first shot on goal in Kraken history was attempted by Mark Giordano. The first penalty in Kraken history was a tripping minor by Jamie Oleksiak. The first start in Kraken history went to Philip Grubauer. The first goal went to Ryan Donato. But there's one piece of trivia that's more important than others. And that's the first win in Kraken history. Still elusive. Despite a furious comeback after being down 3-0, the Golden Knights beat the Kraken 4-3. For whatever it's worth, the Golden Knights won their first game in franchise history. They beat the Stars 2-1 in Dallas. James Neal scored 2 third-period goals. Marc-Andre Fleury stopped 45 of 46 shots. The Golden Knights actually started their existence on a 3-game win streak. How's that for useless trivia? Look, valiant effort by the Kraken. No question about that. I like the fact that after being down 3-0, they didn't just keel over and die. They did have the game tied at 3 for about 35 seconds. Then Chandler Stevenson scored the eventual game winner Talk about a dagger to the heart, right? Right then and there, you knew that the Kraken weren't gonna come back again. They had a hard enough time tying the game at 3. You think they're gonna tie it at 4? Yeah, I don't think so. Neither goalie really impressed me. Robin Lehner let up a soft goal. The Donato goal was soft. The Stevenson goal was soft. That was on Grubauer. But it's the first game of the season. You gotta shake off the rust. I can't get too upset at either goalie. I will say this, though. No team does pregame festivities like the Golden Knights, and that's in all sports. I mean, my God. Projecting the Kraken on the ice, having someone skate around as a Golden Knight, it's like Disney on Ice out there. It really is. Some people will say it's overkill, but everything that happens in Vegas is overkill. Have you ever seen a show in a casino in Vegas? It's overkill. That extends to their hockey team. I mean, it's certainly extravagant, but at the end of the day, I can't get too upset at it. That's what happens in Vegas. And I'll say this, job well done by ESPN in their return to hockey. Ever since the NHL left ESPN, the only time the league was talked about was in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And even then, it got nowhere near as much attention as the NBA playoffs got. Now you're seeing ESPN, the biggest sports media company in this country, pushing the NHL hard. I understand they're doing that to protect their investment, but it's still nice to see ESPN airing these games as opposed to the NBC Sports Network does give the NHL a big leg up in terms of coverage. It should help them gain some ground on baseball as to what's the third biggest sport in this country. The top 4 are football, basketball, baseball, hockey. But hockey can overtake baseball. I mean, I thought ESPN's presentation was very professional. It was very minimalistic, which I think is the right way to go. I don't think you need to get too flashy with your presentation. In between the action, if you want to get a little crazy, okay, I get that. But once the puck is in play, or the ball is in play, as the case may be, just focus on the game. And not for nothing, but the group of people that ESPN assembled to call these games is excellent. It's very diverse. There are a lot of women. You've got some very professional people. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but the 24 people that ESPN put together is great. Job well done by them. And I think the NHL is going to benefit highly from this relationship. Job well done by Bettman. The last story to talk about is the Predators signing Matthias Ekholm to a 4-year extension worth $25 million. That's $6.25 million per year. And this is a good move by the Predators. Ekholm's been a really, really, really good defenseman for the Predators for a long time, since really the 15-16 season. Very durable, plays in just about every game. Last year he put up 23 points in 48 games. He was a plus 19. The Predators will have him under contract until he's 36. Ekholm will stay at this caliber through the age of 36. In fact, he may even stay at this caliber past the age of 36. This is a great move by the Predators. The contract is fair. It makes a ton of sense. Tomorrow's going to be very special. The regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show will contain an interview that I'm going to do with John I. Marino. He wrote a book on the 1962 World Series. Also, tomorrow night, you're going to get my New York Islanders season preview. I'll go line by line, breaking down what you need to know. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.